welcome to kind of browse around, meet with a group representative that will be there for college and military around the area. So thank you again, and I will pass it over to Tree.
All right, good morning. As was the introduction, my name is Tree Florm. I'm with Education Plus Foundation. We're a private nonprofit organization here in Nebraska, and we offer free college planning financial aid assistance for anybody wanting to go to college. Our office in Lincoln is at 1300 O Street, right downtown. You can set up an appointment if you wish and come down. We can help you with any college planning or doing that FAFSA form, which we'll talk about, free application for federal student aid. We can also do virtual appointments, so if it's tough for you to get away, we can set up a Zoom appointment and do everything right on the computer with you. We also have offices in Kearney, Omaha, and Scottsbluff, so we cover the whole state. What we're going to talk about today is paying for college, so we'll go through several parts of that for you today. We'll try and get everything in a short amount of time, about an hour here today. But the good news is you don't have to take a lot of notes. Or remember, 99% of what I talk about is going to be in that handbook in your folder or one of the handouts, and I'll let you know when I'm referring to those today. First thing we're going to talk about is college costs, so knowing those categories that go into what they call the cost of education. The types of financial aid that are available, we'll talk about that FAFSA form and what you need to do that, and then a little bit about how colleges award those HAC information. So for college costs, you need to know that there are 4 categories for that. Most people understand the basics there, tuition and fees, room and board, books and supplies, but there's also personal and transportation costs. Now those aren't paid directly to the college, but they're money that they figure in for the student's budget because they have to have spending money and gas money and that. So when you're looking at student loans or parent loans later on in the process, you want to make sure you're not borrowing money at 6% or 8% to cover those types of costs. So it's knowing that those go into those costs. And in your handbook, and let me find the right page here, 5 and 6, we have all those costs listed for Nebraska schools. So if you're looking at one of those, you can start by checking that out, see what those costs are. Now again, there's some variable costs in there, tuition and fees depending on how many classes you're taking, housing and food, whether you live on campus, off campus, or at home with parents. Books and supplies will be determined by, again, the classes that you take and what your major is. And then, again, the personal transportation is going to be based on the city that you're living in. Obviously, it's going to be a little more in Omaha than it might be in Kearney. So those types of costs will go into that. So these are the average costs for schools in Nebraska. Now, if you're looking at out-of-state colleges, we do have a program on our website at educationquest.org called College Profiles, and you can get information for schools outside of Nebraska. So if you're looking at out-of-state schools, that's a good way to get that information. So these are, again, just kind of the average cost for tuition and fees for 2-year is going to be in the $3,500 to $4,000 range. 4-year publics will run $85,000 to $11,000. 4-year privates, you see that big jump to $22,000 to $40,000. The one thing I always like to point out about that is those private schools have really good foundations or endowments to offer institutional financial aid from their college. So if you're considering a private school, don't write them off just because of that tuition cost. What you want to do is do your application for admissions, have your FAFSA sent there, and then see what they can offer you. Because they'll try to get that tuition cost closer to what it might be at your 4-year public schools. So just remember that part when looking at that. And then the career schools, cosmetology and those types of things will range into 17 to 19. Books and supplies, again, you can see those would be anywhere from $1,000 to a couple thousand, depending on your program. Housing and food, you have a lot of options there also. The type of dorm you live in, how many times you eat in the cafeteria, those types of options. And then again, that personal transportation can run from $2,500 to $4,000. So again, knowing that that amount is in there when you're looking at what you want to do for your student and parent loans. Okay. And if you have questions as we go through, feel free to ask them. And I will be here afterwards if you have some more questions that you want to come up and ask me personally. So then the types of financial aid, once you figured out what your college cost, is determining how to pay for those. So we have scholarships, grants, work study, and student loans. The good news is those grants, work study, and student loans all come from doing that free application for federal student aid, or that FAFSA form. So that's why that's so important for you as a senior to be doing that as soon as possible. And we'll talk about what you need for that and when you need to get that done. Okay. As far as scholarships, we do, again, on our website, educationquest.org, have one called Scholarship Quest. It's a Nebraska-based search, has a couple thousand scholarships in it, totaling about $1.2 million, and it's a small one compared to the national ones. But it's a good way to kind of find those statewide scholarships that have a Nebraska part to them. Also talk to the school counselor. I'm sure they have a website or some way to access all the local scholarships that are around here. And those are really good too, even though they may be a couple hundred, 500, or 1,000. You stack a couple of those together, maybe you can get those books covered and things like that. And I always like to point out that it's not the counselor's responsibility to find your student. It's the student's responsibility to get in there and find out what's available. And it's not just a one-time thing. There will be new scholarships that come in throughout the year. So you can apply for scholarships throughout your senior year here. Colleges, every college is going to have scholarships just for their students. Again, you're narrowing down that pool of applicants to just students going there. Three things you really need to know about scholarships at the colleges is, number one, what do they have available? You can find that out, again, most of the time on their website. You can contact the financial aid office. You can talk to them at the college fair today, or if you're having a college visit. Good way to get that information. Number two, what is their process? A lot of colleges will use their admissions application for their scholarships. Some will have a separate application just for scholarships, and some may have individual ones. Or it could be a combination of any of those three options. And the last thing is your deadlines. Because the one thing I can guarantee you about scholarships is the only time you won't guarantee you won't get one is if you don't meet the deadline. So make sure you know those about your colleges. Then you have private organizations in the community. A lot of opportunities there, whether it's something the student is involved in school or outside of school, parents, even grandparents, if they're in those civic organizations like Eagles and Elks, VFW, Legion, a lot of great scholarships, and that will be a lot of the ones that they'll have here in the counselor's office. There's a lot of internet sites out there now. I think last year I Googled scholarships and got like 1.9 trillion pages. So to make that easier for you, we do have on our website again about 6 or 8 national free searches that we have people check out. So you can kind of trust those. They're free. They don't sell your information, things like that. If you do come across the scholarship you're not sure about, whether or not you should apply for it or give them your information, you can talk to the counselor and they can contact us, or you can contact us directly. We do have a team that goes through and reads all those things that everybody says they read, but they don't. So we check them out to make sure what they do with your information, make sure they're legitimate. So if you have questions, you can do that. And of course, you never pay for any scholarship information. You can always get that for free. This is just a little bit of some criteria for scholarships. A lot of times we hear, I'm not a straight A student, I can't get scholarships, or I'm not going to get an athletic scholarship, so there's no reason for me to be looking. But there's a lot of scholarships based on a lot of different criteria. These are just a few. When you do a scholarship search, like our Scholarship Quest or one of the national ones, they'll ask you questions questions, and then it will pull scholarships that you would probably be eligible for. So don't write it off just because you're not a perfect student. One thing I'll show you here is the best scholarship in Nebraska. You're probably aware who the Buffets are. Luckily enough, he was born on this side of the river, Council Bluffs, so they have a scholarship. This is his first wife, who was passed the Susan Thompson Buffett Scholarship. Again, you have a handout here. This one looks kind of like that. And you can see on there has all the information for the Buffett Scholarship. This is up to $6,200 per semester, or over $12,000 a year. It does have a financial need component, but that comes from doing your FAFSA, so don't worry about that. I encourage all students to go ahead and do this application. You can see just a 2.0 GPA. So again, don't have to be a perfect student for this one. And to renew it in college, and you can renew it for up to 5 years, you just have to keep that 2.0 in college. So again, not really a stringent criteria on that. It is only available at the public 2- and 4-year colleges, so community colleges, state colleges, and the university system. This is not available for private colleges. The good news is, if you start at a 2-year and transfer to a 4-year, that scholarship can transfer with you. So it's a great one. Again, it starts November 1st. It opens up. You do everything online at the buffettscholarships.org. And then the deadline is February 1st. And you'll notice that's 5 p.m., not midnight. So they shut down the website at that point, so you won't be able to do anything after 5 p.m. Central Time there on February 1st. Okay, on the other side of that handout, you have what we call the tuition assistance programs. These are great ways to, again, help you pay for college. The Nebraska Promise is at the university system, so UNL, UNO, UNK, NCTA, or the Med Center, once you get there. This basically says if the student is Pell Grant eligible, or the family income, parent and student combined, is $65,000 or less, they will make sure tuition is covered with scholarships and grant money. Now that will include the Pell Grant if that's part of it, but tuition will be covered by money you don't have to pay back. And it's usually above and beyond that, but that's the guarantee for that. All you have to do is have your FAFSA in by May 1st, so there's no extra things for that. Just double check it. Yep, May 1st. So get your FAFSA done, plenty of time to get that done and have all that in there. The Nebraska State College Guarantee is basically the same thing at the state colleges, although they have the AGI at 70,000 rather than 65. But Pell Grant eligible or AGI of the family is 70,000 or less, then you can qualify for that tuition guarantee there. And Nebraska Wesleyan has one called Access NWU, where if you're Pell Grant eligible and a few other things on their GPA, that you can qualify for free tuition at Nebraska Wesleyan. Now these are the big ones that are out there. Every school is going to have something for their students in the grant portion or tuition waiver or something to those effect. So make sure you're really researching your colleges and talking to them about what they have that you can access to help you pay for college. Okay, right now until November 1st, if you're applying to any of the university schools, UNL, UNK, UNO, or NCTA, they are waiving their application fee. So that is up until November 1st. You can put in Husker, you can put in Loper, you can put in Math, whatever it is. But if you do that now, you can get that $45 fee waived right off the bat. Okay, we do have some scholarships and education Quest. The little postcard you picked up here is our financial aid program scholarship, and that's for sitting here and listening to me today. You can go to that website, use that QR code either way, and you can just application about your student, or if the student's doing it themselves. It'll be a drawing for one of 6 $500 scholarships. So quickly, you can do that. Don't have to write an essay or anything like that. It's just fill that out, and we'll do a drawing in December for that. We also have the scavenger hunt scholarship, so if you do a scholarship quest profile, that will come up. You'll go across the website, probably learn some things, but answer some questions on there, and then again, you're drawing for a $500 scholarship. We do our Get Social scholarship, so if you follow us on any of the major social media, Facebook, mostly for parents, I know kids don't really do Facebook anymore, but Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, if you follow us on any of those, every time we reach a new milestone of followers, every 250, so if we go from 5,000 to 5,250, we'll open up a scholarship on that social media platform. And again, all you have to do is fill out a quick application, and you'll be in a drawing for that. So a few kind of easy ones to get there. You can certainly take advantage of those. We have a new one this year. As you're probably aware, Nebraska passed a law that doing the FAFSA or opting out is a graduation requirement for the students. So we have this other flyer in here. You can see it's called our Do the FAFSA Scholarship. So all you have to do basically is do the FAFSA. We're doing 60 $1,000 scholarships this year. We're doing it by congressional district, so 20 per each of the 3 congressional districts. So high school senior, do your FAFSA, go to a Nebraska college or university next fall, be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, and then we'll have you upload a little information about the FAFSA. But this will come up either, it'll be on our social media and in Scholarship Quest. The application opened October 1st. The first round of grants will be December 5th, and we'll do 8 of the 20 for each district, or 24 of the 60. And then we'll do another round for those that are kind of late doing their FAFSA on April 15th. If you're in the first one and don't get drawn, you're automatically in the second one. You don't have to do anything new. But again, just getting you to do your FAFSA, make sure you're checking that out, and again, just an easy way to have a chance at one of 60 scholarships or 20 per district. Okay. Then we'll move on to grants. Grants are money that you don't have to pay back. They're based on financial need. The largest one is what's called a federal Pell Grant. You may have heard of that before. That is one that's fully funded. If you are eligible for that, no matter when you apply, you will be eligible to get that money. There are some other smaller grants. There's a federal, what's called the SEOG grant, the Nebraska State Grant, which is called the Nebraska Opportunity Grant, and then colleges, as I mentioned before, just like they have scholarships, they have grants for students. But that other federal grant, the SEOG, the Nebraska State Grant, and the college grant money have limited amounts. Okay? So at some point, those are going to run out. Pell Grant, you're fine, that's fully funded by the government, but the other ones, that's why you want to make sure you do your FAFSA as soon as you can. Okay? Every school is going to have what's called a priority date. Now, it's not a deadline, it's just a priority date. Most schools in Nebraska are going to be around April 1st. Some of the private schools may be a little earlier than that, in March or so. So again, make sure you're talking to your schools about their priority date for financial aid. What that tells you is the school says if you have your FAFSA in and everything else and you're good to go, if you're in by that date, we normally still have money in these programs. If you file after that, even if you were eligible for those this year, you may not get that because that money may already be awarded to other students. Now, that every year, because you have to do your FAFSA every year, you're going to be in school that next fall, so remember that. At this time next year, you'll want to do your FAFSA for your sophomore year. So make sure you're hitting that priority date each year to get the best financial aid that you can. The work study is basically a part-time job on campus. So if you're planning on working, this is a great way to do that. It's normally on campus, sometimes it can be off. We've had work-study students in our offices before. This money you earn as you work, so just like a regular part-time job, you get a paycheck. So it won't be there to pay that tuition up front or that room and board if you're living on campus. Now, if you're living off campus, obviously it can help with rent and food, help with books, things like that, or those personal transportation costs. Usually you'll get a choice of jobs. They'll have what's available to them. Hopefully you can find something maybe that goes with your major. So if you're in computer science, maybe you can help in the computer labs. If you're in education, maybe you can tutor other students. But they'll have some basic jobs in the cafeteria, the library, things like that. But again, it's a great way to earn that money. They're a little more flexible than a regular part-time job. They know you're a student first, so that always helps out. Plus, you have that person to write that letter of recommendation when you're ready to go out and get that first job. Then we'll turn to the student loans. Again, in your handbook, and I want to say it's page 8. No, page 10. They change it every year on me. So page 10, has a little bit of a table there for you to look at these student loans. So there are two types. There's a student loan and a parent loan. You can see as a freshman, the student can borrow $5,500. Goes up sophomore year to $6,500 and then $7,500 after that. The thing to know about the student loans is that there are two types. There's a subsidized and an unsubsidized. So subsidized means the government pays that interest for the student while they're in school. So if they take out that $5,500 at the start, it's still going to be $5,500 at the end. Okay? No interest accumulating on that subsidized. With the unsubsidized, you are responsible for that interest while the student's in school. Okay? Doesn't have to be paid, and it doesn't compound, so it's not putting on the principal, so you're paying interest on interest. It sets off to the side until they go into repayment. Now, you can pay that as you go. You'll be set up with a servicer that handles all the paperwork with the student loans for the government, and then you can set up an account there, and you can pay that interest as you go if you wish. Repayment on this will begin 6 months after the student graduates. They give them what they call a grace period to find that job, get all settled. If you go from a 2-year to a 4-year, you stay in what's called in-school deferment, so you're not having to pay that from the 2-year school just because you graduated and moved on to the 4-year. You can always track your debt there at studentaid.gov. Interest rate this year is 6.39%. So that's for the students borrowing now. For you, that will change July 1st. So it changes every year on those. But once you borrow, so the students borrowing this year at 6.39, that loan for this year is locked in at that. Next year, they may have one at 6.1%. So it just depends. So you may have different interest rates for each of your loans each year you go to school. The other thing to know is this is in the student's name. Parent, you don't have to do anything but fill out that FAFSA. There's no co-signing, there's no collateral, there's no credit check. The student just has to sign a promissory note that says they'll pay it back when they graduate. Okay. Then we have the parent loan, or the plus loan. This is where the student or the parent can borrow if you have unmet need after the student receives all their financial aid. You can see this year they've changed everything. It is maximum of $20,000 per year per student with an aggregate amount of $65,000. So total through their school time can be $65,000. If you have a parent loan on a student that's already in college, they do grandfather the old rules in where you can borrow what you need for those students for the next 3 years. Repayment on this is not put off until after graduation. You will begin repaying on this loan 60 days after it's fully dispersed. So that's usually half in the first semester, half second semester. If you're going to quarterly school, you would have 4 of those. But, so when they go back in January at that semester school, 60 days after that, so sometime in March, you begin repaying on that parent loan. Now there are deferments in those that you can get that put off, but the interest does accumulate on that. As you can see, interest right now is 8.94%, and again, it changes annually, so it will be different next year. Okay. Then we'll move on to the FAFSA form and what you need to do with that. Studentaid.gov is the website, so you'll want to go there. First thing you need to figure out is if the student's dependent or independent. If they're dependent, they require parent information. If they're independent, they do not require parent information. Now, these questions will be asked right on the FAFSA form for you, but for the most part, orphan obviously would not have parent information. If you are a ward of the court or in foster care at any time after the age of 13, if you're currently in legal guardianship or aged out in legal guardianship, if you're homeless or in danger of being homeless, or have a child that you support as the student. Other than that, you're going to need parent information. So then we have to determine whose parent information we're going to use. So if parents are married or remarried, or unmarried biological parents living together, you have to report the income for both parents. If parents are divorced or separated, we report the information for the parent that provided the most financial support over the last 12 months. Now, sometimes parents can say we split it 50-50. If you say that, then they're going to default to the parent with a higher income and assets. So it's better if you make that decision than letting the government make that decision for you. First thing you'll need to do is create an FSA ID or a username and password for that studentaid.gov site. Every student needs their own, so they will have to have one for them. Then, depending on, again, the parent situation, at least one parent will need one if they're dependent. And we'll kind of talk about that here, of who needs those, but every student needs their own. Now, again, before I get to that part, so again, if parents are married or remarried and they file taxes jointly, and we're going back this year to 2024, so that's the year you're going to look at, then only one parent would need an FSA ID or an account at the studentaid.gov, because you have permission to pull over tax information for both of you. If parents are unmarried biological parents living together, they can't file jointly, so each of them would need one to pull their own tax information over. And then if, again, divorced or separated, only the parent that we're using as the contributor would need to get an FSA ID. Another parent would not. The other thing, I guess, is if you're married and filed separately, which we see sometimes, then again, both parents would need an account to pull their tax information. If you're a parent without a social security number, you still need to get one. A little different process, which you can be verified through the TransUnion process, which will happen when you apply there. If not, we'll just have to put in tax information manually. And again, there's just a little button there that you click if you don't have the social security number. Okay. So then you're going to complete the 26-27 FAFSA, because that's for next school year when you start. There will be 2 of them open. The 25-26 is out there also right now, so make sure you're doing the correct one. Now, if maybe you're graduating in January or in December and then starting January, you can do the 25-26 for that second semester. Or maybe you're going to jump right in May or June and start summer classes. You can do that 25-26 for that. But most students will do the 26-27 FAFSA. And again, you're going to use 24 tax information for that. You do hear a couple things. You have the FSA ID, how to create that, and has a place to put your username and passwords on it. Then you also have the FAFSA checklist. And again, that has everything you need to gather together to do your FAFSA if you're doing it on your own. You set up an appointment with us, we'll link you to that. It's available on our website, so you can grab that if you misplace your folder. You also use current assets, and we'll talk about that in a second. Again, renew every fall, but you're going to be in college that next year, and then it opens October 1st every year. Has since the last couple of years, but it started again, so it's open right now for you. When we talk about assets, we're going to look at savings and checking accounts. Now, this is for student and parent. Any investments that are not retirement, so CDs, stocks, bonds, mutual funds that you have access to. Rental property, second home, they don't count your primary residence, so don't worry about that. And if you have a 529 college savings plan, those are owned by the parent for the student, if you have it in the parent name. So it goes on as a parent asset, not a student asset. Now we do see where maybe grandpa and grandma have a 529 plan for the student. Then we don't report that at all because it's not a parent or a student asset. So depending on who owns that, even if the student's the beneficiary, it's either a parent asset or not reported. Okay. As I said, primary residence and retirement are not included, so any 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, or simple plans, things like that, are not counted as assets. They will look at if you own a business. Now they have brought back, thank goodness, this year, the small business exemption. So you do not have to count your business assets if you own 50% or more of that business and have less than 100 employees. So that covers many of the small businesses, and then again, actively participate in that business. And we have parents with 2 or 3 different businesses, and they qualify for that under each of those. So if you have questions on whether or not to count your business, you can contact us. And they also this year have put back in the family farm exemption. So if you have a farm, if you live on and operate the farm, now live on is kind of not as important because we know many people live in town and still do farming. So if you operate the farm, it's your main source of income. Basically, you file Schedule F with your taxes, then it's considered a family farm. Now there can be family farms that are partnerships or corporations, and that's fine. We don't have to count those. Again, as long as you're the one doing the farming. Now, you do need to include that ground or equipment if you receive rent. So I have some pasture ground or some farm ground, and I rent that out. Somebody else does the farming. I do need to count that as an asset. Or if I'm a member of a family farm partnership or corporation where I don't do the farming. So we see that quite a bit. Maybe parents have retired and left the ground to the 3 or 4 children. One of them farms it, but 3 of them don't. So I just receive the check from the farming. I don't do the farming, so I have to count that as an asset. Again, if you have questions about these types of things, you can give us a call. So once you've done the FAFSA and submitted it, you will be notified by email that your FAFSA has been processed and sent to your colleges, and you can list up to 20 colleges on your FAFSA. Hopefully you're not at that level, but you can list 3 or 4 if you're still considering different ones. Now again, you will need to have been applied and accepted for admissions and have your FAFSA set there. This will include what's called your student aid index, which is the number they use to base everything off of, and then let you know if you're selected for verification. So this is kind of what your FAFSA submission summary will look like after it's been processed, and you can log in to your studentaid.gov account to let you know your Pell eligibility, your loan information, work study, those types of things. And this is what you're going to need for or do the FAFSA scholarship. You'll need to upload that. or for the Buffett Scholarship. They'll want to have this page too, so you can take a screenshot of that and upload that for your Buffett Scholarship. So verification just means the college may ask you for additional information. Doesn't mean you did anything wrong, it's a random process. They may ask you for tax information, usually not because it is now pulled over from the IRS. But they may have some other documentation they want. If you need help with that, we can help you with that too. But remember, you will not receive your financial aid until that process is done. So you'll just be kind of in limbo there. And that's why students, once you are accepted to the college, you'll want to have your college login information, your student ID number to get into what's called the college's student portal. So like at UNL, it's called MyRed. At Southeast Community College, it's called the Hub. But it's where the students log in to get all their information. So you'll want to be checking that once you are accepted and have that information to make sure you're getting everything that you need from the college. If you have special circumstances, again, we're looking at 2024 tax information. So maybe there's been a change of income or employment or excessive medical or dental expenses not covered by insurance or a variety of things, but that just makes your current income not look the same as it did in 2024. So if that is the case, you can talk to the college, the financial aid office at the college, and they can help you with making adjustments to that so that it reflects your current situation. Now, we can't do anything about that. We can help you with that paperwork, but it's the college that makes that determination. So once they've received all your information, they're going to put it into this formula, pretty basic, but that cost of education. So tuition and fees, books and supplies, room and board, personal and transportation expenses, minus that student aid index, which is what that FAFSA determines, equals what they call financial need. So again, we have a lot of families or parents out there, well, we're not going to receive anything, why do we do this? And they're thinking about, they're not, maybe not receive that Pell Grant, but there's other financial need that's available there. So the work study, the student loans, things like that. So I would say do your FAFSA, see what you get awarded, and then you can determine if you want to do it in the future. So this is just kind of an example award letter from a four-year public college. You can see at the top they list all those costs that they have. Then they have their scholarships. They got an institutional scholarship, an institutional grant, a work study, and then the student loans. And you can see they get $3,500 in the need-based, $2,000 in the non-need-based or the unsub. And so for the scholarships and grants, they'll assume you're going to accept that money. So you really don't have to worry about that. If you want to do the work study, you'll have to accept that. And then the student loans you'll have to accept if you want those. And then you can see at the bottom, they have the total aid of $12,300. So if we take that total cost of $26,400, subtract that $12,300, you have what's called unmet need of $14,100. And then that's where the parent can borrow if they need to in that plus one. But again, remembering that they have $3,900 in personal and transportation expenses, so we don't want to borrow to cover that. Okay, just a quick process reminder, if you're a visual learner, get that FSA ID, student and parent. Now, if you're a parent and already have an FSA ID from you going to college, or you have another student that's already in college, you don't have to apply for a new one. Yours is connected to you, so it will work for multiple students, but each student needs their own. Do the FAFSA, get sent to the federal student aid. They send back that information to you and the college. You'll work with the college then on verification, financial aid, and then the student loans. One other handout you have there is the green one with the little owl on it. This is what's called Financial Avenue. It's a sister company of ours called Inceptia, and they offer this free to any Nebraska student. You can go to that website. It's also on the handout. This is just kind of learning about money if your student hasn't had a lot of experience with it, whether it's budgeting, credit cards, loans, those types of things. So it's a good way to kind of learn about handling that money once they get to college, if they haven't had that experience before. And again, that financial aid program scholarship, you can hit that QR code there. It closes December 19th, it's open now. It's really easy to go out and fill out that information. Again, don't tell your friends that didn't have to come in today about this because they didn't have to put up with me for an hour. So you can click on that, but that's basically what I have for you today. If you have any questions, like I said, you can ask now or you can come up and ask down in here. Again, Education Plus Foundation, we're a private organization. We're not involved with any government part or any schools. So we'll give you help whether you're going to school in Nebraska or out of state. Everything we do is free. And if you want to set up an appointment to do that FAFSA, you can do it at our office. You can come in and do it virtually, or you can set up your own appointment on the website. It's really easy to do. Again, if you need any assistance with any of that, just have a few questions.